Because if an actual guy was listening to me or watching me, he'd know I don't fucking like Scott Walker. And if you tell someone you don't like Scott Walker, they stop trying to get you to listen to Scott Walker. You hear that, phone man? Your echoes suck.
Well, Eli, thanks for joining me for this interview. I'm excited to talk to you about your film, Tastemaker. I really liked it a lot. Basically, like, I thought it was very like weird, but in a good way, obviously, and very different and unique. And you've probably heard that a lot, but I got like a lot of films these 2 seasons that we've done, and it's one of the weirdest ones and like most unique, and it's refreshing, obviously, for someone who's watching a bunch of films to see something that's like very different. So I really like that. Some of the shots were like incredible. I thought like super beautiful shots, especially the one that stood out to me is like in the church. There's some really beautiful lighting and stuff. That was like really amazing. Another thing, I don't know if you've heard this before, also that reminded me of kind of like Severance, like a Severance feel, but it still had its own feel as well. And yeah, it's also very funny and just a cool concept. So that's just some thoughts I have on it.
That's all really nice to hear. I appreciate that.
Yeah, and this is maybe a weird comparison. I'll just say that's the last thing. Have you seen like I Think You Should Leave? That show?
Yeah, of course. I'm a big fan of Tim Robinson.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of that too, where like it starts out feeling like kind of a sketch, which they are sketches, but then it goes down a whole completely different path and is this like bigger story. And I think it although it reminds me of those things and elements, it's like blended in a way that makes it its own thing. And that's what I really care about. I don't like when something feels like a copy of something. I like when, I can find pieces of something else, like other things in it, and it feels like a fresh new thing. So anyway, that's kind of why I liked it so much. So if you could just tell me a little bit more about yourself, like introduce yourself and tell me about your background in filmmaking.
Okay, well, thank you again for having me, and your thoughts and your praise about the movie was really excellent. So appreciate that. About me and my background, I guess, in film. So I guess I've been freelancing as director and editor, and to some extent a shooter in film for about, I think it's been almost 10 years, more than 10 years. I came into the industry, I guess I was told that after I was post-grad and didn't know what to do with my life, feeling kind of lost and living in Toronto, I was told that you could get hired as a production assistant on a commercial film set. You just need a driver's license. They don't really care about anything else. So I got a list for the names of production managers in the city and their phone numbers, and I just kind of cold called them.
Wow.
And sure enough, I'd be like, "Hey, I'm looking for work as a production assistant," and then I'd be like, "So and so told me to call you," which was, and they, without asking much about me, they'd be like, "Great, are you free on Monday?" And yeah, it was luckily like a very busy time in the city. So there was a lot of commercials being shot, and just a need for bodies. And I guess I sort of learned the world of film from getting these jobs, and being a production assistant on commercials is strangely different from being on a feature film or a TV show that there's no real union. It's like freelancers that have a Workers' Rights Protection Act. At least that's what it is in Canada, in Toronto. So there's very little, you can really interact with the other departments. So if you want to learn about lighting, you can go up to the electrics, you can ask them about stuff. It's a little bit harder with the actual like camera team and the DOP and the director, but if you want, you can stand right behind them while they're shooting and sort of learn that world. And wardrobe, props, like, it's very easy to get in and with and talk to these people. So that's kind of how I learned film. And then there's the sort of darker side of that job, which is that film sets are very much a hierarchy, and that can you're at the bottom of the hierarchy, so that can get a little bit tired after a while. So eventually, over time, I had amassed enough sort of clients and connections that I was able to sort of start freelancing, and start freelancing and working as a director and an editor and someone who shoots, mostly
Wow.
as an editor. That's where it's easiest to get work. And then when I had the time and resources to make my own stuff.
Awesome. Wow. That's a cool story that you're able to do that. You just kind of took the initiative there and just, you were grinding. So that's pretty awesome. All right, let's talk about the film specifically. Like, what inspired you to create this specific story?
I mean, there is the like complete direct connect of back when I had Spotify, sort of the curiosity and the collection of emotions that or ideas that run through your head when you get kind of recommended the same songs or the same artists over and over again for listening to. It just sort of seems like sort of strange and arbitrary to be this advanced set of systems that is supposed to, understand and curate for you in real time better than any human could ever do, because they're, pulling from a database at breakneck speed and all this stuff. But I still just kind of felt strange and weirdly specific, the music that I was being offered. And, same with YouTube videos or other websites, that, sort of thinking about how algorithms work, how, suggested content works. I just, started daydreaming and spitballing ideas, some ideas with friends. It's interesting you said sketch before, because it did start originally as an idea for a sketch, about just like, how does that work? And how does that, how could you explain that, in layman's terms? So I just went with like the funniest sort of like explanation. I went for the funniest explanation of how that kind of stuff works, and I was like, well, is there a story with this? Can I run with this? How far where will this strange idea sort of take me, if I get really imaginative with how sort of a human generating suggested content for another human in real time, like how would that work?
Yeah. I liked how he let the guy took it like like very personally, that the listener didn't like the recommendation, and
Yeah.
it kept them up at night. And actually, that's something this maybe was probably unintentional, I'm not sure, but it kind of makes you think in a more like realistic situation that sometimes you can say something and for you it's not that like serious or whatever, and then for someone else they may be thinking about that all the time after that. They may have taken what you said personally. So it's kind of like I don't know, a message or kind of a theme of like, you don't know how your words or actions could actually affect someone. You may have no idea. Like maybe you said something like 15 years ago that's still sticking with someone. I don't know. So is that something that you were like consciously thinking about or as a theme? Or is it just kind of came out naturally?
That's part of the thinking. I mean, it's always I made similar to a film that I made a few years ago. The sort of what you don't know, what you feel would be like a mundane exchange or something that someone says to you in passing that they would have maybe perceived to be as an extremely forgettable moment.
Yeah.
And often ends up being the things that stick. These transformative moments are typically not this like very cinematic thing. They usually happen, quietly,
Yeah.
inadvertently a lot of the time. So it's fun to think of like, I don't know, I guess I see also just sort of wanted to go down the like, the kind of person that I guess you would meet working at a record shop. How some people are
Mm,
like very serious with their music recommendations and, their ideas about music sort of in the way music critics talk. Just kind of like their opinion, or their taste is considered an objective standard, which I always find
Yeah,
frustrating and kind of funny.
yeah, that makes sense. Like I can kind of see that kind of person now that you say it, I can kind of picture that.
Yeah.
Um, all right. Well, can you tell me a little bit about the process of making this film? Anything come up during the shoot? I mean, it was a very ambitious shoot, a lot of locations and stuff, and a lot of attention to detail. I've noticed. So it looks like there was a lot of work that went into this, and also locations outside and stuff. So I imagine you had to have faced some challenges, maybe unexpected situations.
Yeah, I mean, well, any kind of film project that is a certain level of involving, you're just bound to have thing go wrong after thing go wrong after thing go wrong. It doesn't even matter how well prepared you are, or how good and how detailed your storyboards and your shot lists are. It usually all kind of goes out the window, once the camera starts rolling, once you show up on the location. So, there's always a long list of things that went wrong, or things that didn't go exactly the way that I had planned. It's just kind of the nature of things. But yeah, I mean, it was a very involving process, especially for a short. Typically, I wouldn't, go that big. But yeah, I had originally been given a grant from the provincial body here in Ontario,
Nice.
but it was conditional. And I had a grant writer help me, and the grant writer was not very good at explaining things to me. And it was conditional on me fulfilling the budget, which was more than the money that they had given me, with a different grant body, that they were going to pay for part of it, and then I just secure the rest of the budget with another grant body. But though I didn't get the additional grant bodies from the city and the country, so I had to go back to the province and say I wasn't able to fulfill the rest of the budget requirements. Could I do this for just what you've given me? I think it was $8,000, which is not a lot. And they said no. They said it's conditional on you fulfilling your original budget, which was over 10,000. And I said, they usually take a long time to get back to. They take months. This was stretching out the process of making this movie for a year and a half. And then eventually I was just like, well, I'm going to do it myself. And I'm going to take, we shot it with the DOP, Julian Lamaga, has a camera. He, took on a lot for this movie, and so we weren't really paying much for camera and camera gear and grip and lighting. We got favors, a lot of favors that way. We got a lot of favors for the locations. But everything else, I did pay for. And I was like, to make this movie, I'll make my own grant. When that version of that is me taking out a line of credit from my bank, which turned out to be kind of a dumb idea. But I made it. I was my way of kind of sticking it to the government, grant bodies here. Just kind of saying, well, I want to make this movie. I'm going to make it happen. If you're going to help me or not, I'm going to figure it out. And I did, but it was tough. I had an actor drop out last second because he had this big job, travel job lined up, and I didn't want to have him to say no to do this silly project where I was not paying him very much to do.
Wow.
DOP Julian had this big job also get in the way of shooting an entire day and a half, and we had to bring in his friend who's also a DOP, which is like a really crazy thing to do, to have two DOPs working on the same movie, independent of each other. So just it was kind of like whatever it takes to make this thing work. Once we were actually shooting, we didn't run into a whole lot of trouble, but it was getting there and making sure that everyone would be there. That was the tough part.
Interesting. Yeah, that sounds stressful. A lot of obstacles. Do you think being a production assistant helped you? I don't know, anticipate some of that stuff or deal with some of that?
Definitely. I mean, knowing the world of production, a big part of it is whenever you're putting together the means of any production, of any shoot, part of the pre-production process is to have contingency plans for everything. and that when something does go wrong, you know exactly what to do. Or even if there's a surprise, something that you thought never in a million years would happen, something that seems so set in stone, no problems, easy peasy. It's like an attitude adjustment. Like you can't waste any time or energy kind of fretting or pouting about how things didn't go your way. You just kind of have to focus, be laser sharp about how you're going to deal with this problem and what you're going to do. But yeah, you have to be very focused and very pointed and not be phased when things go wrong.
Yeah, something that comes up a lot in these interviews is about directing style. Almost every interview it kind of comes up because it's something interesting to me is like a lot of directors, most of them that I've interviewed are very like meticulous, right? But something you said kind of points to this idea of, you know, sometimes you have to also be really flexible and be willing to change your plan. And I feel like, you know, I've done some short sketches, and I feel like my style is a little more flexible like that. I'm not a big planner, but I feel like maybe I should be more of a planner. But what do you think about your style? Do you feel like you are someone that likes to have everything planned out? It sounds like maybe you like to have it planned out and then also have like a plan B, or do you kind of thrive on maybe the excitement of not knowing what to do necessarily and kind of improvising and figuring things out on the day?
Yeah, it can be a bit of a balance and a bit of a dance. So it's a combination of sort of what you're speaking to, like you want to be prepared, but you don't want to spend so much time being prepared that you get sort of narrow focused in what you want to do, and that when you start shooting and you get to your location, you start working with your actors, you reach limitations with your camera. Like if you're so hyper focused on what you were storyboarding or what you were writing in your shot list and what you had on your mood boards or your whatever materials, that you know you just sort of start to short circuit when things go wrong and you hit stress mode and you get very difficult and then everyone just kind of gets miserable with you. And then, well, you know, so you want to have an idea. You want when your keys and the people that are working for you are talking to you about what you want to be able to articulate that. You want to be able to understand what you want and be able to explain it to others. And then, yeah, sort of not getting too hyper focused on the pre-production. And then when you go into these locations, be like, this is what I would like to do. This is the most ideal way that I would like to shoot this and implement this. When we get there, I understand that might not be the case. And if that's not the case, sort of, yeah, having that contingency plan in place, and then also sort of trusting the technical savviness and creative input of the people around you. If your DOP, you know, sees another way of doing things to sort of, if you have time, you know, honor other people's sort of inspiration about this thing and see where that takes you. You know, not be shooting down other people's ideas because you're the director. To be open. But again, yeah, balancing of what you want to do and how long it takes to do it with, you know, the reality of having time in a location.
Yeah, balance is definitely the key there. I think, you know, you don't want it either extreme. You don't want to be too rigid and you don't want to be like unprepared. But yeah, sometimes I've found that when making a film, sometimes the best ideas or just cool ideas that come up are not what you had planned, and it just comes up on the day. And then I like to just be open to that and say, you know, that was actually better than what I wrote, so let's try it. Let's do that actually. Or wow, this is a cool thing to add.
If someone says like, oh, I want to do it this way, even if that doesn't quite sit with you, if you have a good relationship with your DOP or your other keys, you'd be like, and you have time to try it, definitely try it. Unless it's totally out to lunch, but it's like definitely try things. But yeah, it's a balance because it's like you want to have that looseness where if inspiration strikes while you're on set, you want to be able to capitalize on it. But also, you don't want to say like, come to this place at this time. We don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
We have very little resources for you to look at before you get here, and we're just going to kind of figure it out when we're there. That's also not great because, you know, you want, if you're going to be working under someone, it's because I've been there as well. I've DOP'd and I've assisted, and I've camera assisted, and I've been all sorts of positions. You want to be able to look up to the people that you're that you're working under and be like, what's the vision? What's going on here? When you have a clear understanding of that, then you can kind of maybe come up with other creative ways to augment what's going on. If you have no idea what's going on, that's typically when people get kind of lost, start dragging their heels, getting bored, start looking at their phones and stuff like that. So it's a tough balance to strike, and it's something that comes with like trial and error and doing as many shoots as you can with as many different people, seeing who you work well with.
Exactly. Yeah, very well put. Well, about the film, like, what do you think was your goal with this? When I watch a film, I always think about that. Like, what are they trying to say here? What do they want me to feel? What do they want me to take away? What did you want the audience to take away from this film?
I guess with a lot of my movies, the main reason that I like telling and making stories and videos and whatever kind of media is like, I guess usually most of what I make is like relatively absurd. I kind of want people to channel their ideas and conceptions of meaning and story, narrative structure, how to make sense of things. I want there to be more of an openness and sort of how we derive meaning from a story, where we make connections, and how we digest narrative, which sounds very vague, but I feel like with a movie like Tastemaker, it's a hard movie to it can be kind of a dense movie, but I made it a pointedly put the pieces and the ways to fit this movie together there. Everything has a specific name. Things are mentioned in a very specific way. All the dialogue either points to something about the character or something about the story that's going to be useful to sort of piece together what exactly it is I want to say and how exactly the action is unfolding. The other thing is, rewatchability in movies and videos. It's I want this to be my favorite movies are movies that I've gone back to and got more and more from them every time I've watched.
Yeah, this definitely feels like that type of film where you can miss something because there's a lot going on. And, watching it again, you could get like another perspective on things. Yeah, that's cool. I think it's like you're taking the audience kind of on like a journey too. So that must be pretty cool. What has there been anything interesting you noticed about people's reception to it? Something maybe you didn't expect?
Well, the real fun of watching my work with an audience, be it a small screening or in a big theater, is to gauge sort of like where the laughs are, what gets a reaction out of people, and the differences between audiences. Where you get, 2 films ago, I made something that was less obviously funny. It was a movie that came off, depending on the kind of person you are, or what kind of things you find funny, or sense of humor. There were some audiences that watched this movie and you could hear a pin drop. There are other times you watch this movie and the crowd was just rocking the whole time. With Tastemaker, it's been pretty consistent about like where people laugh and where people kind of like have fun with the movie, you could say.
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's like a bit of a variation on is the dance towards the end with the CEO. There's been, so it hasn't played in very many places, but so far there was like people laughing and having a good time and stuff, and then that part of the movie happened, and she walks on stage for the first time, and it was like very quiet until like towards the end. And then there was the most recent one that I did. People were laughing, people were loving it, laughing throughout the whole kind of dance sequence. I don't know. It's tough. It's not tough, but it's interesting to see where the reactions lie and sort of what to trust as a comedic success based on audience reaction.
Yeah, that is interesting. Yeah, that part to me, was like more creepy than funny. But
Yeah,
I think it
that's
was
kind
funny
of what
though.
I want. I wanted to walk that line of like, people wondering like, should I laugh? Is this supposed to be funny? Is this crazy? In this world, is this normal? Like, yeah, I wanted to be contemplative at least for part of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a cool thing with making these types of films is like I don't know, making the audience a little uncomfortable sometimes, and really getting their attention and doing something different. So it's kind of cool to have those different reactions. Well, another thing I like to ask is like, what do you think you learned from this process? Is there like a specific lesson that you think that you've learned on this shoot that, or this project in general, that you'll take to future projects?
Hmm. Well, I think the big one is like not a great answer, and it's that don't take out a line of credit to make a movie. But I mean, also, if I didn't take out that line of credit, the movie would never have been made. It's just taking me
Yeah.
longer to pay it than I had anticipated. Um, it's tough because sometimes the movie that you want to make is costs money that you don't have, and something that uncomfortable doing, and this happens a lot, especially with short films, is sort of there's like an expectation that people want you. Oh, it's a short film. There's no budget. It's a passion project, and you're sort of expected to show up and do long hours and do all this work for little to no pay. It's also not really something that I want to do or get people involved in. I wanted to either be, if I can't directly pay someone their rate, I at least want it to be them working on this thing to be advantageous for their portfolio or their career in some way. I like to use these films as an opportunity for people who are trying to learn the position above them to get that firsthand experience. But going forward, the big thing I learned was take more time to. I don't know. I don't know. Get better at getting grants. I think this is a big one
Yeah.
for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard because like something that at the moment could seem like a mistake, in retrospect could be like, I'm glad I did it, So sometimes it's hard to even judge what is a good decision versus a bad decision. Because
Yeah.
sometimes you can make a good decision and it turns out bad, but at the time it felt like it made sense. And then sometimes you can make a decision that feels like a bad one and it turns out good. So sometimes it's hard to know
Yeah.
what the right thing to do is.
We'll see.
But
Yeah. But I would agree.
but it but it worked out, so that's what's important.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll
I'm
just
proud
ask.
of the work, so that's not
Yeah,
nothing. But yeah, I wish I didn't have to take out a line of credit.
yeah. What are your thoughts on just crowdfunding? Is that something you considered or no?
Yeah, I've crowdfunded in the past. I just feel like I've exhausted my friends and family. I guess I have a hard time asking people for money and support
Yes.
that way sometimes. That's something that I should get better at and more comfortable with. Oops, sorry, losing a little bit of light here. Something I could get more comfortable with and push myself a little bit harder is crowdfunding what I'm missing instead of relying on grant bodies that take several months to tell you no.
Yeah. All right. Well, what is next for you? You working on any upcoming projects or anything?
Yeah, well, I actually have another short already finished. Actually, it's just finished. This one's a documentary. It's a bit of a change of pace and style.
Wow. Okay.
Content-wise, it's actually not that different. Subject-wise, I should say. It's in the style. I made a documentary a few years ago, a short documentary, and it's like, sort of like a spiritual successor to that. It was called Tirana Ding Dong, and it's just another short where it's a documentary with me and my camera and screen recordings where, similarly to Tastemaker, music that this is years ago, but like music that I really liked that came on my Spotify radio, and just kind of floored me. It was like I couldn't, it was this solo piano, but then it led me to a music label that produces a lot of this ambient music, but all the albums and all the artists didn't really have any information about them. And then the website of the label also basically had no information. So it's me setting out to figure out who these people are and why exactly it ended up on my Spotify if they've gone out of their way to make to make their digital footprint as small as possible. And it becomes a fun little ride.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going to come of it, but I've just finished it, so I'm looking for some places to show it around the city in Toronto and perhaps online soon.
So it sounds like music is a kind of a big deal for you, and a big inspiration for some of your film stuff.
Yeah, just recently though. I don't know that it's. I think it's
not always.
Yeah, bit of a coincidence here with sort of things that are causing ideas in me. Just music streaming, I find to be just kind of a funny and interesting concept.
Yeah, and the music in this film was also very good. So. All right. Well, Eli, that's pretty much it. But it was great talking to you and meeting you and learning about the film and your process. It was very insightful. So, I look forward to your future projects and I'd like to check out that documentary. So, let's keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me and asking great questions, and hearing your thoughts on Tastemaker was excellent. So I'm very appreciative and happy to talk with you.
All right, thanks. Have a good one, Eli. See ya.
Okay. Bye-bye.
All right, bye.